All right, a rough season is continuing for the Browns. They're 1-4, have not looked good as a 1-4 team, and on Sunday their road gets a little bit tougher. I'm seeing here that they're playing the Eagles at Philadelphia, 1 o'clock start. It's a Fox game if you want to watch it. Mike, this has been kind of a rough season. It hasn't gotten any better for the Browns.
Yeah, and this was something I worried about because the injuries when they happened during last year, some of those guys, especially the linemen, those were 1 year rehabs, and that carried into this year. So some of those guys didn't come back. Plus, you had Deshaun Watson, who didn't get any snaps in preseason in an exhibition game, and he's looked rusty. And you've had all they have injuries. That's another thing with the Browns. The Browns have had the last 2 or 3 years a plethora of injuries. So I think, Chris, this is a team that may have to get younger because they're having the same thing happen, even though they made the playoffs last year. Look at all the injuries they had last year. And already, well, we're 5 games in, and they've got a ton of guys that are either lost for the season or on IR. And there seems to be, I don't know what it is. They have been one of the most injured teams in the NFL the last 2, if not 3 years. And so, and they look like they just don't have a clue of what they want to do on offense. I mean, I realize Deshaun Watson's running for his life because they're not giving him any time to even throw deep. But teams they can't run because, you've got your all-pro Nick Chubb still standing on the sideline, even though I think he's getting closer to getting back. But and teams know that Browns running game is only so-so without Chubb. So they know they're sitting on the pass game, and the Browns don't throw it deep. So, they're just sitting on that short pass game left to right. And that is a really ugly looking product offensively right now. And I'm saying that as a Browns fan. It's really painful to watch. And I don't see any quick fixes. I really don't until some of these guys get back healthy. And by the time they get back, Chris, and I think I said this last week, if they're 1-5 after this coming week with the Eagles, I'd have to look up the stats, but I bet there aren't too many teams that started the season 1-5 that made the playoffs.
Well, and we've said this before. You start getting your picks back. I know the first round pick comes back. Next year, but
I've seen some draft publications that have them taking a quarterback too.
So, I told you, and I don't doubt you for questioning me, but remember at the beginning of the year, I said, look, Deshaun's better play good or he might be out of a job. And I didn't think it was going to be this bad. But
when I watch, and I think you and I were talking off the air too, when you watch the body language of some of the guys on the offense, it just doesn't look like they're on the same page. I think they're like shaking their head and going, what was that? Well, that's what we're doing at home, but we're not paid professionals to go out there and do that. So I just think it's a shame because the Browns have a good defense, but when the defense is on the field 75% of the game because the offense can't sustain a first down, you got problems.
Well, here's the other thing. Denver didn't like Russell Wilson. They let him go. They ate a ton of salary cap.
Right.
So Denver got really constricted about what they did. Yeah. And no one ever thinks that Denver's going to be a playoff team this year. Denver's looked pretty good lately. And what Denver pretty much did was they just said, okay, we're going to pick the best quarterback available to us in the draft.
Yeah.
And Bo Nix, I'm not completely sold on, but they're a 500 team right now.
Yeah.
And maybe the Browns look at that where if you cut Deshaun or trade him or maybe stash him on the bench, he's going to cost a ton to get your salary cap.
Yeah.
But maybe you just sit there and say, hey, bring in who we have. Let's develop our other guys. Because I've heard other people say, look, the Browns still have a pretty good team. They're just not playing together right now.
Right.
So
they still have that window, but that window is closed. You got to get it done while you have that window. And offensively, I think they're ranked dead last in a lot of the stats in the NFL. Now think about that. Well, that's the team that made the playoffs last year with Flacco when he was a quarterback, and they were throwing the ball over the field down. They had a vertical passing game then, and now they jettisoned Flacco. And look what they have now. That looks like a badly constructed high school offense to me right now, Chris. And again, I'm saying that as a Browns fan, but I'm frustrated because you see the same thing. There's never any change. It's the same thing. I get the coach says, well, we got to change things. I take the blame and all that. Well, that's fine. You should, but you got to make some change. I got to see something different from week to week. I see the same thing from week to week.
I mean, that may be what happens. Maybe, like I said, maybe they follow the Denver path. You save money, you pick a rookie quarterback, and you just see what happens. And maybe, like, Amari Cooper, they did a contract restructure where he'll be easy to trade. Maybe you see which guys are tradable. And the hard thing is they're not going to trade Myles Garrett. I don't think you're going to get the return for Nick Chubb. So maybe Cooper's the guy you trade and what else happens. But again, you look at Denver. I thought Denver was going to be horrible this year. Denver's not that bad. Maybe you can kind of rebuild on the fly where, you may not be a playoff team next year, but at least you won't be 0-16. You might be 8-8 or something.
Well, I never thought I'd say this, but sadly, the Browns may be in the running for that number 1 pick if things don't change quickly. Because, I mean, if you can't score, you can't win. I don't care what kind of defense you got. When you can't score, you can't win.
Well, I'm troubled by what Kevin Stefanski says. I kind of agree. You're not getting that much with Jameis Winston that you don't get with Deshaun Watson. But to hear what he's saying, I'll tell you, Mike. You already fired a coach with the Jets, and the Jacksonville guy might be gone.
Yep.
You may see a midseason change, and I'll tell you, Mike Vrabel. I think the interview was like,
I'll tell you what, Mike Vrabel is an AFC North kind of coach. He's a hard-nosed kind. He fits the AFC North to a T. So I'll say no more on it, but I love Mike Vrabel.
Well, if we're in the Haslam's office right now, here's what I'm thinking. Steelers did this with Brian Flores. They picked him up to be a special assistant for the defensive, guys for a year after he got dropped by Miami. Yeah. And he got so good, they were like, they're offering Flores jobs. Now he's at Minnesota, and Minnesota's an undefeated team this year.
Well, here's the other thing, too. The Browns just gave Kevin Stefanski a 5-year extension. So between Deshaun Watson and Stefanski getting an extension, they would really have to bite the bullet on a lot of money. So I don't know.
If I'm the Haslams, here's the question I have. And I say this to whatever team wants to fire their coach. Who else do you have? And a lot of teams don't really have a good answer for it.
Right.
You've got Mike Vrabel in the building.
And I've seen his name come up with other jobs already. Yep.
There's talk that there might be 8 head coaching openings. So you already have one in the Jets.
Right.
I'm not sure if Mike Vrabel is the hottest name out there, but he definitely is in the top 8. So if you don't make a change, and like you said, Mike Vrabel's AFC North coach, that might be a fit.
He reminds me of the AFC North tough coaches, disciplinarian coaches. I like that.